All right, today we're talking about our very last of the 28 principles, Principle 28, which says the United States has a manifest destiny to be an example and a blessing to the entire human race. Let's talk about this phrase, manifest destiny. Actually, in most high school textbooks today, manifest destiny really only has one meaning. Do you know what that is? Do you remember seeing that discussed anywhere, manifest destiny? Of course, you don't read the same high school textbooks that most read. Manifest destiny usually refers to the fact that the United States will grow from what to what? From sea to shining sea. And there's that beautiful painting of Lady Liberty hovering over some pioneers as they're going west. This push to the west so that the whole Union can eventually become from sea to shining sea. And that's usually what is referred to nowadays as manifest destiny. What I want you to know is, in addition to that, there's another meaning for manifest destiny. And let's go to, again, historian John Fiske, who writes this. This is on your first page of the 28th Principle, page 305. He says, they, the founders, believed that they were doing a wonderful thing. They felt themselves to be instruments in accomplishing a kind of manifest destiny. Their exodus from Europe was that of a chosen people who were at length to lay the everlasting foundation of God's kingdom upon the earth. How do you like that? Where in the world to get that idea? I'll tell you here in a minute. This steadfast faith in an unseen ruler and guide was to them a pillar of cloud by day and a fire by night. You ever heard of that? It was of great moral value. It gave them clearness of purpose and concentration of strength and contributed toward making them, like the children of Israel, a people of indestructible vitality and aggressive energy. Whoa. Laying the foundation of God's kingdom on earth. In other words, they felt somewhat like the children of Israel who exited from Europe, which they compared sometimes to Egypt because of the oppressive nature of the European kings at that time, and came to a land which they described as what? Very, very plentiful, bountiful, lots of possibilities, land flowing with milk and honey. You remember that's how the ancient Israelites described the land they were going to, Israel. And they really did feel like they were being guided by providence to come here. And you find preachers, particularly in New England, preaching this doctrine, quoting Scripture that reinforces this. So they actually felt like that they were on a mission to do in America what the children of Israel did, and to set up in America a great foundation that will help America lead the rest of the world into 1,000 years of peace, prosperity, and freedom. In other words, they were on a mission for God. Let's read again, we've read this before, but let's read on 306 in the middle, John Adams. You see if you get that out of John Adams' quote here. He says, are you with me in the middle of the page? I always consider the settlement of America with reverence and wonder as the opening of a grand scene and design in providence. In other words, this isn't by chance. This is the design of providence, God. For the illumination of the ignorant and the emancipation of the slavish part of mankind all over the earth. What is America's destiny, according to John Adams? and others who said the same thing. What's America's purpose? To break down slavery all over the world. And they said, we feel like this is what God wants us to do. We are on a mission for Him to do it. We are helping do it. And this is America's destiny. What do you think? So really, yes, America was to go from sea to shining sea. But the other part of Manifest Destiny was to begin to build a foundation from which freedom could then go forth throughout the whole earth and break down tyranny and to emancipate, as John Adams said, the slavish part of mankind. Where? All over the earth. Isn't that something? But you have to go back to their preachings and their teachings and their writings of the founders to read that. Because you don't read that in very many history books anymore. Used to, but you don't. Now I want you to look, speaking of John Adams, over on page 307, quoted by another person there, but basically he said, if the American people fail in this effort, it will be what? To the hopes of the world. Did you get that? Yes. It will be treason to the hopes of the world. In other words, this is something that we must take very seriously according to the founders. You can't just slough it off. Because the world is waiting and yearning and looking for a way to escape tyranny. Still are. And America must provide the example and the answer. And I don't know if this charges you up like it did the founders, like it does me. It really kind of puts fire in your bones. It gives you a sense of direction, a sense of duty when you study history. This is not just all by chance, according to the founders. This is, what did John Adams say? Design in providence. Now let's read another one of the founders on the very bottom of page 307. This is John Jay. Who was John Jay? One of the great founders. He was appointed first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by President Washington, and very deeply religious man. Helped to formulate the Jay Treaty, which really solidified a lot of the freedoms that the Americans fought for. For example, do you know that the British kept most of their troops on our northern border, even after the Revolutionary War Treaty was over? The Treaty of Paris was signed. They took some home, but they moved a whole lot of them up to our northern border. Thinking what? Why would they do that? These people think they can self-govern themselves? No. When it fails, we'll be right there. We'll just move back in. And it was John Jay who helped negotiate what has been known as the Jay Treaty, almost at the end of Washington's 2 terms as president. And among other things, that Jay Treaty provided for the British to take their troops home. So John Jay, he really writes some great things here about America and its people. Let's follow along. He says, bottom of 307, "It has often given me pleasure to observe that independent America was not composed of detached and distant territories." What nation was that he was familiar with? Composed of detached and distant territories. What nation? Great Britain. Can you name some detached and distant territories of Great Britain? How about India? They had influence in Africa. Up until recently, they controlled and owned what? Up until 99? Hong Kong. And it said the sun never sets on the British Empire because it was all over. Detached and distant territories. Very, very difficult in many ways to govern. Well, he says, but one, talking about America, but that one connected, fertile, wide-spreading country was the portion of our Western sons of liberty. He says, Providence has in a particular manner blessed it with a variety of soils and productions, and watered it with innumerable streams for the delight and accommodation of its inhabitants. What's he saying here? America, together, connected, it's fertile. Have you ever looked at America on a globe? Where does America sit geographically? About halfway between the equator and the North Pole. What does that mean America has? Some real nice weather, depending on where you live. But America has it all. You want to live in the desert like we do? You can enjoy some pretty warm weather and some pretty nice summers, or winters, right? If you can endure the summers, the winters are just what we live here for. But if you can't stand the heat and you don't mind the cold, where would you go? How about up north? Montana, Washington, North Dakota. It gets pretty cold up there. There's just a variety. And soils. Have you ever looked at the soils? Who are gardeners here? Any gardeners? All right. This soil that we have here in our state, what is it?
Red.
What is it?
Red.
Well, some of it's red, yes. It's very alkaline. You know what alkalinity is, right? Base in chemistry. Very alkaline. In other places up north, what is the soil? It's the opposite. What is it? Acidic. And certain vegetables and certain plants grow better in certain soils. So that's what he's saying here. There's a variety of soils. He says innumerable streams. Have you ever looked at a map of the United States and just studied the rivers and where they are? For example, the major river in the United States is what? The largest river? The Mississippi, running right down through the Midwest, right? Right down through the breadbasket of America. And what do you have dumping into the Mississippi? Can you name some of those? The Ohio, the what? You know some of these rivers? The Missouri from the other side, the Arkansas. And if you look at those rivers and how just at the right distance there are, if you lived in that area and you were farming and you had produce, you know, before trucks and so forth, to get to market, how would you do it? You'd get it to a river. Because, as he says, the rivers are just at the right distances. They flow in the right place so you can take all your produce clear down to where? The mouth of the Mississippi. And then put it on ships and take it everywhere. See what he's saying here? Look, continue what he's saying. He says, a succession of navigable waters form a kind of chain around its borders, the oceans, as if to bind it together, while the most noble rivers in the world, running at convenient distances, present them with highways for the easy communication of friendly aids and the mutual transportation and exchange of their various commodities. See, he's describing this? Incredible. What do we have? Innumerable streams, navigable waters, most noble rivers, which he said make transportation easy. And he says Providence has done this. This is not by chance, in the words of John Jay. Then he addresses the subject of the people. And he says, with equal pleasure, I have taken notice that Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people, a people descended from the same ancestors. What does that mean? Most of the people in America, and still have where are our roots? Most of us. European. England and so forth. Yeah, there's a lot of people here with other roots. But particularly at this time, a lot of people here from same ancestors, okay? Speaking the same language, professing the same religion. Right? He was meaning the Christian religion, which is still true today. Attached to the same principles of government, very similar in their manners and customs, and who by their joint counsel, arms, and efforts, fighting side by side throughout a long and bloody war, have nobly established their general liberty and independence. Isn't that beautiful? Same principles of government, similar manners and customs, and we're able to sit down and establish an incredible form of government. What do you think? He's described the country, he's described the people, and now look what he says about them both being together. He says, down at the bottom of 308, this country and this people seem to have been made for each other, and it appears as if it was the design of providence that an inheritance so proper and so convenient for a band of brethren, united to each other by the strongest ties, should never be split into a number of unsocial, jealous, and alien sovereignties. Isn't that beautiful? According to John Jay, this is really all by design of providence. The country, the people, never to split. This is the great desire to form a union. And don't want to leave anybody out. That's why they had to compromise on some issues. We got to form a union here, as we'll learn a little bit later. Even on the subject of slavery, that most of them knew was wrong and it had to go. But let's form a union first and then we'll work on it. That was their desire anyway, originally. Okay? Well, now as we conclude, I want you to turn to page 309 and let's read a little bit of Madison. This is again from the Federalist Papers. He says this on 309, "Is it not the glory of the people of America that, whilst they have paid a decent regard to the opinions of former times and of other nations," what does that mean? They've paid a decent regard to the opinions of former times. What do you think that means? They've studied previous civilization. They've studied Greece. They've studied Rome. They've seen the trials that these people went through. They've seen their form of government. They have studied all of that. What does he say about it? They have not suffered a blind veneration for antiquity, for custom, or for names to overrule the suggestions of their own good sense, the knowledge of their own situation, and the lessons of their own experience. What's he saying here? We've studied them, but that doesn't mean we've blindly followed them. Actually, they found out there were some things, a lot of things, that those people did, they chose not to do. So don't think that the American nation was founded by copying other nations. Wasn't done. That's what he says here. Let's go on. He says, "To this manly spirit posterity will be indebted for the possession and the world for the example of the numerous innovations displayed on the American theater in favor of private rights and public happiness." What does that word mean, innovations? What's an innovation? A new idea, right? New way of doing things. He says that's what we did. Took all these ideas, we created our own new one. He said, "Had no important step been taken by the leaders of the revolution, these new innovations, for which a precedent could not be discovered." In other words, it didn't happen in any nation previously. "No government established of which an exact model did not present itself. The people of the United States," now he's going to describe what would have happened had the founders not done these new innovations. "The people of the United States might at this moment have been numbered among the melancholy victims of misguided counsels." Those poor people, just like the poor people of Europe living under tyranny, that's what the United States would have been. must at best have been laboring under the weight of some of those forms which have crushed the liberties and the rest of mankind. Can't you just hear Madison saying, aren't you glad the founders did something different than what mankind had been doing for centuries, for millennia? And you just see that in there? Actually, he says it. In this last paragraph, which we'll close with, he says, happily for America, happily we trust for the whole human race, they, meaning the founders, pursued a new and more noble course than just copying the old things that didn't work, right? He said they accomplished a revolution which has no parallel in the annals of human society. They reared the fabrics of government which have no model on the face of the globe. They formed the design of a great confederacy which is incumbent on their successors. I'll pause there and ask you, who are their successors? Who are they? We are. To what? To improve and perpetuate. May I emphasize those two words to you? Improve and perpetuate. They wanted us to, first of all, learn these principles which we've studied. And if there's any improvement to be made in the system, improve them. Don't vary from the principles. Improve the system as we can, and certainly perpetuate it, because the founders did their very best to study, to dig it out, to sweat, to toil, and even to die for what we have today. That's our charge, young people. Are you ready to improve and perpetuate? I hope you can do a better job than my generation's done. That's what we need to do. Thank you very much.